Hey everybody, and welcome to a new episode on the BookTube channel. Today I have author Gerald Brandt. Gerald, how are we doing today?
Good, really good.
Good. That's great to hear. I mean, amongst all of the things going on in the world, it's always nice that we can, have a smile on our face for at least, an hour chat.
That's right.
But guys, so Gerald's here today to talk about his new series, Quantum Empirica. But we'll get to that a little bit later. First of all, I just want to know, Gerald, I want to know a little bit about you. I want to know kind of growing up, going through school, how you got into writing, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
All right. I was an avid reader for growing up. Just it was my escape. It got me out of a lot of problem areas in my life. I could just get into a corner and read, and I devoured pretty much anything that was put in front of me. And I started writing, I'd say probably in junior high. I might actually have one of those notebooks still lying around, but it's on the burn pile, I think, because it's pretty much garbage. And then in high school, I met my first computer. Right, it was a Commodore PET. That's a long time ago, in the 80s, early 80s, I guess. And all thoughts of writing and everything else kind of went out the window, and I devoted myself to a career, which is still doing very well for me. But I turned 40, and I said, this is something I've always wanted to do. I'm still an avid reader, and I just really wanted to write. So I said, okay, in 10 years, I wanted to have something published in 10 years. I gave myself 10 years to go from pretty much green to something publishable. And it took 10 years. At the age of 50, I signed my first contract with DAW Books.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to give myself like an ultimatum. I can't remember who it was that I talked to. They said that they gave them, I think it was P. Jelly Clark. He said, I'm going to give myself a year to write a book. He goes, I'm kind of in a little bit of like a transition period. So he goes, I need a book written by the end of this year if I'm going to do it. And I keep telling myself, I was like, that sounds great. And the next day it completely leaves my head and I'm like back to square one.
Yeah. Self-imposed deadlines are the easy ones to break.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But, in those 10 years, I wrote 6 or 7 novels in 10 years and about 20 or 30 short stories. And I only sold one of those short stories in that time period, and really none of those novels. Right?
Wow.
So that was all just getting the skills up to where they needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So are all those notebooks still to the side? They're not in the burn pile yet, correct?
They were, no, they're pretty much all gone. Yeah. They're pretty much all gone. I just have that one notebook from junior high. That's it. It also has some really bad poetry in it, but we won't go there.
Is that going to be published posthumously?
No, it's going to be destroyed now that I've talked about
it. I always have to know, because I know all author types, they always have that one or two or multitude of stories that'll never see the light of day. And I always, I wonder, A, why do you keep it? And B, why do you keep it? I think some of it's just to go, oh, wow, I was really bad at that point in time. And now I feel like I've accomplished something, now being published and so forth. But at the same time, it's like, maybe I can go back and I'll fix everything that's wrong with it. And I'm curious, is that something that you would maybe consider doing, would be going back and fixing it?
I probably wouldn't. The simple act of going back and fixing it would probably take as much, if not more time, as taking the idea and starting from scratch. Right? Because it's some of that stuff is pretty much garbage, really.
Yeah.
And it's, as you're learning, you make the mistakes, and some of it might be pure gold and most of it's garbage. So rather start from scratch.
Yeah, especially, now that you've had plenty of years between now and junior high, that you're like, I'm a much better writer now.
That's right. Yeah.
So I guess, would you say you started writing seriously at 40, when you gave yourself that 10-year kind of period would you say, okay, this is when I'm seriously going to start writing? Or, I mean, would you say you took your writing a little seriously in junior high? I mean,
No, did I take it seriously in junior high? Yeah, I did. But, it was highly derivative of everything I was reading at the time, Eddings and Lord of the Rings. And it's all very, very high fantasy and, huge descriptive passages and things like that. But when I really started getting serious, like I did mention that at 40, but now if I think about it now, would 40 have been? Yeah, I guess 40 would have been about the right age. Yeah, 40 was when I really started getting serious, and I sat down every day and started writing with, I guess I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in the house. So one in preschool and one nowhere yet, still at home.
So I need to know. So I've got a almost a 6-month-old now. I need to know what is the secret to getting writing done with a child that is not yet in school, because that has to be near impossible.
And it is. I was the stay-at-home parent. My wife was off working and bringing in more money than I ever could. So I was basically the stay-at-home parent. And I guess I was lucky. Well, at 2 years old, they slept until about 6:30 or 7. And my wife left for work at 7 in the morning. So my alarm clock was set for 5 a.m. And I wrote from 5:10 to 7 a.m. every day, every morning. Well, except Sunday, I think I got to sleep in, because we traded Saturday and Sunday, the wife and I, for who would get up with the kids. But so yeah, I got 2 hours every morning, uninterrupted. I was lucky to have an office in my house, close the door, and I had 2 uninterrupted hours of writing every day at 5 a.m.
Man, I wake up at 5 every day, but that's because my wife also wakes up at 5 every day. Yeah. so I while she's kind of getting ready for the day, I'm up prepping lunch and getting stuff ready for the day for her, because since she's still 6, she's still pumping while at school, so I'm trying to get all that stuff all together. And then of course I wake the baby up or she wakes up at 7, so I've got about a 40-minute window that I can actually get anything done. And usually that's getting my coffee and trying to, figure out what I'm going to do for the day, whether it's, work or maybe I'll get reading in. But, it's interesting because, at the beginning of the whole pandemic, I feel like I was reading a ton. And then probably around the end of May, beginning of June, so like right before my daughter was born, it started slowing down a little bit because we were kind of like, okay, it's going to be any day now. We've got to be set and have everything together. And then as soon as she came, it was like nothing. and the writing juices went away. The reading juices went away. And it's just been like, kind of like you were, stay at home dad mode, and then get work done and try to make it all happen every single day. And it's like stressful. I mean, I can't imagine taking care of 15 first graders every day that my wife does, especially, social distanced and having to keep them with masks on. And it's near impossible to do that. And they never leave the classroom. But it's a lot.
It is. And I don't think I would have been able to do it if I had a 6-month-old at home when I started. Right. I mean, I was lucky that my youngest was 2 at the time. Right. He's 18 now. So yeah, I couldn't have done it. And I also I have a very supportive wife. So when I said I was working those 2 hours in the morning, I didn't have to make a lunch for her or anything. We did most of that the night before if we remembered. I didn't even have a cup of coffee. I went straight from bed into this office chair and wrote for 2 hours. And when I left my office at 7 in the morning, my wife's walking out the door with my coffee in her hand. She hands it to me, hands me the kids, and that was it.
I'm envious. I have to have a cup of coffee as soon as I wake up. I can't function without it.
I do now as well, but I'm older now.
Well, see, I never drank coffee up until, I don't know, probably when about the time I got married. My wife was a coffee drinker in college, and I mean, I just never needed it. And then of course, as soon as you start drinking it, you're kind of hooked, and you start getting those lovely, never actually disconnected. So I don't know. Okay. So yeah, so coffee is a must. All right.
Yep.
So yeah, but no, yeah, I guess with a 2-year-old, I mean, I assume, they're a little more independent and can like maybe focus on tasks for a little bit longer. Cause like I put my daughter like in the swing when she's done eating her bottle in the morning, and she's good for maybe like 10 minutes. And then she's just like constantly needing attention until she goes back down for a nap. So it's like, do I like write on my phone while also like holding a rattle? Like I don't, I don't know what to do in that situation. It's like that, or do I, go to bed and let my wife pass out, and then I like write on my phone? Like I don't know what the answer is, but trying to find time is impossible.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
Which is weird because I'm at home all day, but
The little one most of the time, though, right?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your writing process and maybe how it's changed over the past 10 years, kind of from when you first started to now. Did you have like obviously, you were waking up starting at 5:10 and going until 7. Has that changed? Are you still doing something similar to that? And then, do you have like a routine that you have to do something every day? You have to hit a certain point, certain page count, word count, etc.
Yeah. The 5 a.m. Starts don't happen. Well, they stopped for the longest time. They've started again, but I'll get back to that a bit later. I basically got down to a routine where when I'm doing a first draft, I have to have X number of words a day. And for me, that's 2,000 words a day. And I still work. I still have an almost full-time job. I work 4 times a week. So, getting those 2,000 words a day, it happened usually in the evenings as time progressed. And Saturdays, if I didn't do anything on like Monday to Wednesday, then those word counts, 6,000 words, I had to try to fit somewhere in on the weekend. But I tried to have a word count every day. And that's usually first draft stage. And I still try to stick to that for first draft stage. When I'm in revision mode, I try to do at least a scene a day. And I have multiple revision passes. One pass is for emotional content, one pass is for tension, one pass is for. So I go through many, many different passes on the same scene. Not all at the same time. I'll do the emotional content in the whole book, and then I'll go through and do the tension in the whole book. So I'm going through over and over. And for that, I try to do a scene or 2 a day. But this last year with COVID and everything has messed me up. We actually started staying home in March, and I thought, oh, good, I'm home. I still have my job to do, right? I still have to do my 4 days a week, and luckily I'm an IT guy, so I can do most of it remotely, 99%. And I figured, okay, well, good, and then I can, I'll have time to do my writing as well, and I can keep everything up and get back on schedule, because I felt a little bit behind schedule, and it didn't turn out that way. I found the process became more difficult as time went on. Part of that, I think, was the stress of COVID and other things. World politics is one of them for sure. I work now in the same location that I write, and those things were merging and becoming muddled, and so I kind of fell off the wagon since March, and I haven't been able to do a ton of writing, which is why I'm still working on book 3, which should have been handed in, let's just say, a little while ago. So, I've got my second extension on book 3, which embarrasses the heck out of me, and I wish I'd never had to do it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, circumstances kind of dictate it. It's really a hard time to focus. It's a hard time to, I hate to say like feel happy about something. But you just see everything that's going on around you, and I think the lack of social community, or the lack of community period, is kind of what's keeping kind of me and my wife at Livesteon. You know, I'm fairly introverted, but you know, I do enjoy having a social life, and the fact that it's now all, you know, online it was fine for a couple months, and now it's kind of starting to get to me. And
it takes more effort to have a conversation over video like we're doing now than it does to have a face-to-face conversation. Right. And so you start feeling drained and you start feeling wiped out, especially if you're doing, you know, I had 3 meetings this morning at work. So, and this is my fourth discussion today, right? My first concerning the book ever, but that's all right. But it drains you, right? All this, you're paying attention, and sometimes you have multiple people that you have to pay attention to. So yeah, it's different.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you know, it's only, you know, I'm not gonna say it's only fair, but you know, it kind of comes with the territory. You know, at some point you're gonna kind of slow down, and you're gonna kind of maybe overthink something, or you know, you just go, okay, this isn't gonna work out. I have to have more time. So I'm sure your publisher understands. And they had to go through something similar, you know, when they all had to start working remotely and everything, you know, all publishing dates got pushed back, and
and I'm actually lucky with this series. In theory, I would have handed in all 3 books before the first one came out, which you know, I've only had one other trilogy before, and that's not the way that one worked. And from my understanding, that's not the way it usually works. So I'm luckily I had that breathing room, right? Even if they bring out the books once every 9 months, I still have time to get book 3 done and polished, and then go to the editor and get the editor passes and the copy edits and all that stuff done before I start feeling any real time crunch on a publishing date. So I got lucky with this series on that.
Yeah. So Robert J. Sawyer says, mention WordStar.
Oh, yes, WordStar. Yeah. You know, again, all of my computer experience started in the 80s, and you know, with you know, CPM and all the other stuff, and I learned how to do word processing on WordStar, and I loved it. And I moved to Word and LibreOffice and all those, and I really don't like them. I write all my books not on WordStar, but being a software guy and an IT guy, I wrote my own word processor and called WordStar, and it's a WordStar clone, essentially, all the same commands. What you see is what you get, all that kind of stuff. And I do all my books on those until it hits the editor. Then I have to start bringing it into LibreOffice, because everything's done in DocX format from that point.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, that's kind of neat. Made your own program to write in. Hey, you know, I don't think many people can say that.
Well, you know, kind of a little bit nerdy that way, maybe.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with all being nerdy. Okay, so tell me a little bit. So you said you've been reading for you know, most of your life. Who would you say are maybe some of your major influences at the beginning? Maybe they've continued until now, and then maybe if you have any newer influences, I guess, since you started writing seriously.
All right, yeah. The early ones, going back a ways, of course, David Eddings was a big one. Lord of the Rings was a big early one. I used to be a huge Piers Anthony fan, but he hasn't aged well in today's environment. So I actually dropped him quite a while ago, although I still have 3 of his books on my shelf. I think the Bio of the Space Tyrant series, which I promised myself I'll read again someday, but I haven't, because I have, you know, 5 shelves of to-be-read books already. So we'll see.
I hear you there.
Yeah. One of the ones that I've loved and I've reread at least 3 or 4 times now is Mary Stewart and her Merlin series. I don't know the exact name of the series, but that's a phenomenal series. Now that I'm talking about it, I want to read it again. You know, we get into something a little bit more modern, perhaps. Snow Crash, Neil Stevenson is one of my all-time favorites. I absolutely love that book. And do I have any favorite authors now? You know, in all honesty, my reading has dropped off substantially with the amount of of work I have to do, because of course my workload has increased for the paying job, because I have to do everything remotely, and I'm supporting, instead of 50 people in the building, I'm supporting 50 people in their homes now. So that workload's increased. The stress of being behind my deadline. So my reading has dropped off. But I try to, well, if you ask my wife, I don't read at all anymore. I actually picked up a book and read it the other day, and she looked at me and she said, and she just, this look on her face was, she was flabbergasted. She says, "You're reading a book." I've become addicted to Facebook, so I spend a ton of time on there. So I really should throw that away. David Gemmell is one of my huge ones. I think if you'll notice, the majority of my favorite authors are fantasy authors, and all of my throwaway novels were fantasy novels. All of my sale novels were science fiction, which is interesting. Yeah.
It is, yeah, yeah. And I was interested when you said Gemmell, because I've kind of, I guess, ridden on the coattails of all the I guess you would call them grimdark authors of the fantasy realm. Just he kind of fathered that. I guess you could say. A lot of people say that that's kind of where it started. That's where Stephen Erickson got his kind of inspiration and so forth. So that's really interesting that you threw Gemmell in there, because I always hear Tolkien, and I haven't heard much Eddings. But yeah, throwing Gemmell out there kind of threw me for a curse, since you're a science. Well, I guess you're an author. You just published as a science fiction author. Is that but you can read one and write another, or vice versa, or write the same one. But yeah, as far as reading, I completely understand. I mean, I don't think my wife ever sees me read, because generally when she's home, it's the Kindle never comes up, or a book never comes up, unless I can't get to sleep. But so usually my reading's done during my lunch hour or something. So, but yeah, I haven't done much reading. I'm trying to kind of do my diligence where I'm reading the books that are coming out in like 6 or 8 months. So when I get to that point, I don't have to feel bad for not having gotten to it. So I think I've already read like between 5 and 10 novels that come out next year. So I feel like I've got a pretty good start. But most of my Goodreads shelf is children's books, just because I'm marking them off as I go. So I'm counting, my 24-page board books as a read book for the year. So.
That works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think before the summer, I think I was already at like 100 or 125 books. And then since then, novel-wise, I may have read 20 or 30, maybe. Yeah. And it's it's just so, I don't know, depressing. I love books, and I love reading, and I just, every time I think about reading, I'm like, what else can I do? Because it feels like I slog through books now. And so I end up picking up my Nintendo Switch or something, and it was like, all right, let me go get lost in the game for an hour, just because I feel like it's constantly going, and because what I'll end up looking down and looking at the page I'm on, or looking at the word count or something, and I go, I'm not getting anywhere in this.
Yeah. And part of that is the concentration level, right? If you pull up a video game, you can immerse yourself in it, but there's reflex and stuff. There's not a ton of thought. If you're reading a book, you're processing the words, you're feeling the emotions, you're hopefully, and you're
just dead inside while reading.
But it takes a lot more effort to read a book than it does to even watch a movie, or to whatever. It takes a lot of effort to get yourself immersed. So it sometimes, especially with things that have been going on in the world this year, that effort is, it's spent by the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I'm starting to kind of come back around. I kind of forced myself into rewatching the first season of The Mandalorian, just so I could kind of enjoy the new season that's been going on. And so I was like, all right, every single morning at 7 o'clock when I give my daughter her bottle, I'm going to watch at least an episode. And so that's our bonding time, is we watch The Mandalorian, at least for the past week. And so I'm like, I feel like if I can get 30 minutes, and then maybe I'm like, okay, maybe I'll watch a movie. And so I watched, I think, The Invisible Man last week, because I hadn't seen it. And I actually like got through it in a day. I felt really good because usually it takes me like a week to watch a 2-hour movie. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm getting somewhere, but who knows? I mean, so now it's like, all right, what is the next book that I need to read? Okay, just dive straight in and see what happens. So, but yeah, it's just I guess it's just the timing. I don't know. But I can't just wrap my head around words because I read emails all day, and I'm responding and sending new emails out and typing all friggin' day. So I guess maybe I'm just tired of looking at words at that point.
With the way the world is today and a 6-month-old at home, give yourself a break. I think you're doing good.
I'm not good at giving myself breaks. Maybe that's the problem.
Maybe.
I'm always go. Oh goodness. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of get into your writing a little bit. So I kind of want to know, what is the draw for you when it comes to science fiction? I know we talked a little bit about what you read growing up, but does it have to do with kind of what you read growing up, even though what you read was fantasy, or does your career field have anything to do with kind of your route into science fiction writing?
That's I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know how to answer that one. To me, when I wrote my fantasy novels and when I wrote The Courier, the first one in the San Angeles series, even though that one is science fiction, to me it was, it was the same. You still have facts you make up in both of them, but you still have to have some reality behind it, right? Something logical, so it has to make sense. So to me, they kind of follow in that respect. They follow the same pattern, right? And I don't know. I think they're exactly the same. And Threader Origins over here, I actually wrote it as a fantasy novel. As far as I'm concerned, it has a magic system and it has all this other stuff in it, but it is science fiction. So I think some publishers have a science fantasy line that they put out. DAW doesn't, so it's science fiction. But and it's got all the it's got quantum physics in it, so it's it's got to be some science in there, I guess. Granted, my brain's not big enough to understand quantum physics, so it's glossed over a little bit. I'm not that smart.
There's nothing wrong with that. So Quantum Empirica, which begins with Threader Origins, set to hit on January 21st. Can you tell us a little bit about book one, and then maybe kind of what we'll see as a progression in the series?
Sure. The book's actually coming out on January 12th, 2021.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I saw the 21st. I saw the 21st at one point, so I wonder if that was just a typo.
Well, there's a chance that you might have more up-to-date information than I do. The authors are usually the last to know. Yeah. So what was the question again? I lost it.
You're fine. I just wanted to know a little bit about the book, and then maybe about the series as it progresses. Without being spoilery.
All right. Yeah, I'll try not to give out any spoilers. Besides, everybody dies. All right. The basis for the novel is that a father and son are working on a quantum-based machine that can essentially deliver unlimited power, electricity, basically. And they do all the tests on it, and they build it together. The son is actually a university student, and he's just working with his dad at a company called Quantum Labs, to get an extra credit and stuff like that. So they're working, and they have to do a full power test. And at the point where they reach 100% power, things go wrong, and Darwin, the university student, gets pulled into an alternate world. And this alternate world is a place where, again, there's a Darwin and his father. I'm not going to get too much into detail, but it's basically a parallel Earth. So there's the same people are in it, the same thing happened, but perhaps on a different timeline. In the world he goes to, the same quantum machine had been turned on 5 years previously, and the world has changed because of it. There was basically a group of people who could start to see what they call threads that are generated by the quantum machine, and they learned how to read them and manipulate them and use them to do things. And there's a group of people that do that, and then there was a group of people that still relied on standard technology, and they got into a war. What we call threaders, the people who could use threads won, and the world is basically run by people that use threads. And by world, it's actually rather segregated because they've lost the fossil fuels, because the war destroyed a lot of things. They lost fossil fuels, they lost electricity, they lost all that stuff. They lost communications. Basically, North America doesn't even know if a Europe exists or if a South America exists anymore. They've become small communities that trade with each other and use the threads to help each other if they can. And yeah, he gets transported over, and he realizes, or he learns that he's one of these people that can use threads. And basically the first book is the only thing he really wants to do is he wants to go back home. He wants nothing to do with the alternate world. He wants to go back home and kill that machine before it does the same thing in his world that it did to the one he's been transported to. And that basically summarizes book one.
Hey, great summary. So what were some of the influences behind this story? What kind of got the juices flowing to write about something you may not know a whole lot about, like quantum physics and threads?
Yeah, this book came around a little differently. I had the idea before I actually sold the Courier. So the idea was kind of there, and I started looking in the bookstore for books on physics and quantum physics, and something that I could understand. And I started writing this one pretty much right after I'd sold the Courier, and before I'd sold books 2 and 3 in the San Angeles series. So this kind of fit right in between those two. And I picked up a book called The Dancing Woolly Masters, and it's about it's not a common thing anymore, but it's about the quantum physics and Oriental cultures and beliefs and how they intermingle, and so I kind of pulled a bunch of stuff out of the Dancing Woolly Masters book and started developing a story that I already had a main character for. Most of my stories start with a character. I already have a character in mind, and I know what I want them to do, and I build the world around them. So this one started off basically from reading that one book. Actually, I was reading it at work one day, The Dancing Woolly Masters, and I have a bunch of post-it or little tags in the book for all the highlights and a yellow pen for all the things I want to remember. And one of my coworkers picked up the book, and there's a whole section on quantum physics, and then there's a highlighted section. And he goes through and he flips it and he says, "You've only highlighted all the emotional and creative aspects. You haven't highlighted any of the science." I said, "Well, so that's the way it is."
Oh, goodness. So what did you find fairly easy about creating an alternate Earth? And to double down on that, what did you find to be the most difficult?
What makes a parallel Earth easier, especially something that's based on the current state that we know it, or perhaps project into the future or whatever, is that you can have Google Earth or Google Maps, and you can take a look at places, right? And that simplifies a lot of things. And during the editorial revisions for Threader Origins, I actually drove down to a conference in San Jose. And so I had a conference in Calgary, and then from there I drove to San Jose. And I actually went through a lot of the places that are mentioned in the first book. So instead of just looking on Google Maps, I could stand there and say, "Oh, well, it's August, and I can smell the fields," or if I turn around and look at the mountain backdrop, there's a great big letter G on the mountain in white painted rock, something you can't see on Google Maps. So I could bring in all those details. And from San Jose, I drove down to to San Diego. There's a lot of San Diego in the book. So I brought a bunch of real things from there. And, it was, so Parallel Earth makes it easier to get those little details, especially if you can travel to the spot that you're writing about.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the easy stuff. The hard stuff was the quantum physics, which, again, if you're reading it expecting to get a science book on quantum physics, you're going to be very, very, very disappointed. It's a novel, and the quantum physics is the basis for it, and there's some terms thrown around and some names, but you're not going to get a big science text. It's not a hard science fiction book.
Need to put a little disclosure.
Yeah.
Do not use for factual references. Oh goodness, because you got the word quantum in there out for the series title, so everybody's be like, I don't know, maybe he's gone to something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. No.
Did your I guess current career, did it play any role in maybe some of the things that you have going on throughout the series? Just being in IT?
No, if I do happen to write in some scenes concerning computers, they're probably going to be fairly realistic. And then when I go back and edit them, I pull out, the 3 pages of details that nobody needs anymore. So,
all the code behind it.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed for me is actual software development coding uses the same resources in my brain as writing. So if I'm in a heavy duty project and I'm doing a ton of coding and I can't write, because by the time I get home, that well is drained. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in heavy duty into a book and I'm like when you're writing, you've got 1 or 2 or however many novels in your head. If I have to go into coding, then it's basically dumped. They've got it. There's just no room for it. I can't do both well at the same time. I've got to do one or the other. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I moved into IT rather than software development, because I write scripts now and things like that, but nothing serious. So I don't have to do a bunch of coding. It doesn't drain the well that I need for writing.
Yeah, I could only imagine like how that gets intertwined, because you're just always typing at that point. I think the only way you could maybe do it would be to freehand the book while you're doing coding on the computer, but still at the same time, it's just a dump of information that just may not be there, like you're saying.
Yeah, and possibly I've just purchased myself a Remarkable 2, which is it's basically a tablet, but it's got a paper display on it with a pen that translates automatically into text and will email you the document. So I'm hoping that when that comes early December, I can use that to churn out more words than what I'm doing now.
That's neat. You ought to do a tutorial on it.
Perhaps. It's supposed to be so easy to use that you don't need a tutorial.
Ah, okay. I'd be interested to see your review of it.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about threaders, and does the use of threads, does it become detrimental at any point for the characters?
Yeah, because they're quantum based, and basically you can try and remember that saying now, and it's gone from my brain. But whatever, if you follow a thread or follow multiple threads from a single point, you can see, there's some people can see multiple different futures based on a single act. Which one will become real is, depends on actions, things like that. But basically, if you follow a thread or too much, or you concentrate on too many threads at once, you have the chance of losing your mind. And basically, you're in diapers sucking your thumb for the rest of your life. So
that's disappointing.
So yeah, the people that really are highly proficient, because not everybody's highly proficient in threads, right? Those that are highly proficient always kind of teeter on the edge of sanity. if they push just that little bit too far, they're going to lose and their brain's going to snap. And that happens a couple of times in the book. I won't say to who though.
That would be a spoiler, Gerald.
It would be a spoiler.
So did you have, I guess, a keen interest in quantum physics? I mean, you said you had the book that you made tons of notes in and so forth. I mean, was it an interest in that, or was it just something that kind of fit the mold of what you wanted to write?
I think it. The original idea for me was the threads, and using the threads as a magical system, or in the case of this book now, a pseudo magical system. And I really needed to figure out what created these threads and how they worked and how they moved, and I just nothing I could think of fit very well. And then I was reading a local paper one day, and there was a small article on a quantum physicist, something I can't remember what, and something went click. And I said, quantum theory, quantum strings, and the strings are threads. And then I started doing the research and just happened to come up to the Dancing Woolly Masters, and from there it just solidified.
Yeah. How long did it take for that to click? I'm curious.
Well, the idea, like I said, the idea of that was in, I probably got the idea for Threader Origins 11 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. So it took a good 4 or 5 years before something solidified and I started doing the research on it. And then it was a good 1.5 to 2 years of research before I realized I was just not smart enough to understand quantum string theory, and then I started writing the book based off of what I could understand.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm always curious because you hear a lot of authors talk about they've had this idea of boiling for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and I'm always curious how long it takes or what it takes for something to just click and be like, that's it. Kind of like when you read that article, you're like, oh, that's how I can, do it, So, and then it's just like everything just fits, all of a sudden. It's really interesting how, you can just be boiling over for so long, and something as small as an article or, a segment in a show or on the news or something, and you're like, that's how I can fit everything. Okay, we're good now. I got
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to know, so last question I got for you, and this is kind of a general question I do at the end of these segments. Even though you haven't read a whole lot recently, is there anything that you have read maybe this year, or something that you always come back to that you would recommend, or maybe somebody that you feel like needs more readership?
One book that I started a while ago, and I'm going to have to apologize to Troy once I mention it. Oh, darn it, now I can't remember the title. Darn it. Troy Carroll Butcher's book. Wow, that's embarrassing. That's horrible. Wow.
See, wow, you've already given me all of the data, and it's just all gone now.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying his book immensely. It's just, again, my reading has slowed down so much that I haven't finished it. One that I'm very much looking forward to reading is Nick Martell's. I believe you had a chat with him a while back.
Mm-hmm.
That one sounds incredibly intriguing. And again, his second one's about to come out, and I haven't read the first one yet. But
You've
both
got time.
Both of those at the side of my bed, just waiting. Right, the next one's on the stack, and I think those are the two that really I'm looking forward to. I know you mentioned Rob Sawyer earlier. He came out with his latest, the Oppenheimer Alternative, I believe, and very much looking forward to that. It sounds like he's kind of gone back to his roots and created a true Rob, what I call a Rob Sawyer book, and it's hard science and and solid facts, and just incredibly well done. So I'm very much looking forward to that when I have a chance to read it.
Fantastic. Yeah, Kingdom of Iris is great. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I kind of met Nick through Twitter, and we had a chat, and then he was on, of course, on a convention last year, and then we've kind of become friends. We text each other every now and then, talk about new books and so forth. But it's funny how you mentioned him, because when you were talking about the Threaders, it kind of reminded me of the magic system that he has in his novel, or in his trilogy. Yeah. But instead of kind of, I guess teetering, it's like the more of the magic that they use, it kind of starts crippling them. So I found that really interesting, because that is the first book that popped into my head when I read a little bit about the Threaders and about their origins and so forth. And I'd seen in the synopsis about it having a detriment or being detrimental, and I go, oh, that's really neat. Like, it's a science fiction version, and I can kind of see why you had written it as, or how you wrote it as a fantasy. And so I'm really intrigued to find out. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about Kingdom of Iris when you get to it. And I'm sure Nick would too. I'll have to mention it to him.
Oh, I'll have a chat with him at one of the conventions one day. Another book that does that incredibly well is The Gossamer Mage by Julie Cerneda. Her magic system takes years away from people. The more you use it, and the more you age and become decrepit, and it's I loved that book. There's a lot of writers that I enjoy and a lot of books I enjoy, but there's very few books where I read them and I say, man, I wish I was a better writer. And The Gossamer Mage by Julie Cerneda was one of those. It was very, very well done.
At least it just didn't turn you off from writing. See, I feel like that's what I do. Is like, I can never do that.
Gives me something to strive for.
There you go. Oh, and by the way, I want to clarify. You were right. It is January 12th. No idea where I got the 21st from. Maybe a bit of dyslexia hit me. I don't know. But yes, it is January 12th, 2021. But yes, Threader Origins will hit then. It'll be, like I said, the first book in the Quantum Empirica series. And Gerald, it has been a pleasure having you on. Very much looking forward to book 1. And I hope you get some readers out of this. I know you've already got one out of me, so definitely excited about it, and just looking forward to more that you've got coming for us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, and by the way, great job on your first interview.
Well, thank
you. Blackout and everything. Well, you have a great rest of your week, and like I said, we'll look forward to the 12th on the release of your new book.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gerald.